Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
To carry on from the discussion that we were having in our previous lecture, I would like to take you over through some of the remaining rules that we follow in order to ensure that any print production that we are planning, whether it is a poster, sometimes it could be an emailer, sometimes it could be an invitation that we are forwarding even on WhatsApp, and of course in the case of books and other print publications, please keep in mind that anything that appears as a list, whether it is a bullet list or a numbered list, an index is also considered a list of references is also considered a list. Please then in that case apply hanging indentation. We had almost concluded our last lecture with this discussion, where I had pointed out how between the two blocks on the screen, the block on the right is much more clear to follow because the numbers have hanging indentation and we can go very swiftly from one point to the next. The next rule I want to discuss is alignment. 90% of the time, especially for print publications, we tend to follow the justified alignment. This ensures that the text runs from left to right margin, that there are not too many lags or rags on the left or right hand side. Justified text also tends to take up less space on the page. You will notice here I have two blocks of text. The block of text on the left hand side has the justified alignment, whereas the block of text on the right hand side is left aligned. And you will notice, if you look at the dotted line at the base of the screen, then there is a little more space when we look at the left hand side paragraph. This is because left aligned texts take up more space, but with justified alignment we have in fact saved an entire line of text. So unless perhaps it's a volume of poetry or the text itself is very short lines where the left aligned text makes sense, but otherwise you can have left or center or right aligned text on a book's cover, that is not a problem. But when we are discussing the pages, then it is best, when you have running paragraphs of text one after the other, it is then best to have justified alignment. Contrasts is very important to have in any reading material that is being designed. Different levels of information may be highlighted through the use of a shade of black, which you know gives you gray, or if the budget permits or the design permits, you are of course free to use a color. Secondary text, especially captions, notes, by page architecture, here I am referring to a running head or a running foot. All of these you may use a shade of gray, and that does not require any extra costs to be added to the cost of production. Well, you are applying a shade of gray. Please try to not go lower than 60 or ideally 70% of black. These colors you may arrive at by interacting with the color palette in either InDesign or Quark Express. There, a color in its full strength usually shows up as 100%. If you take your mouse cursor to where the value shows as 100%, you will be able to type in 60 or 70, thereby arriving at a shade of black. For readable text, I would recommend you don't go lower than 70% black, because any gray below that level will become hard to read on the page. Varying size, typeface, weight, color and the style. Again, by style we mean, are you using bold, are you using italics, are you using all caps or small caps? All of these together can give your designs a big impact, can make the text look much more organized, can help you isolate the different levels of text very easily, and the reader then, when they pick up the book, when they interact with the book that you have designed, this entire scheme that you have of how to represent the various levels of text, that scheme is very, very easily communicated to your reader, even though you are not around when the book is on the shelf, even though you are not around when the reader buys that book or reads it. The typesetter or the book designer actually does not get any space in the book to explain what they did and why they did. But if the design works, then that design communicates their intention to the reader, and the intention, of course, always is to make a book very easily, very clearly readable. On this example that I'm sharing with you, this pair of pages, I had shared it once before to illustrate the use of serif and non-serif combination. Now I'm sharing it so that you can see how the margin notes and the picture caption are appearing in a shade of gray. In this case, we haven't. Try to not use both. If you're using a serif combination with the non-serif, in that case, if the secondary text is set in the non-serif, that is difference enough. In this case, we haven't changed the font. What we have opted to do is, we've opted to change the color. Sometimes overemphasis is not good. In this case, the typesetter has decided body text is possibly 10, margin notes as well as the picture captions are possibly 9, as they should be because they are secondary text, and the only level of difference that we have applied is through the use of a shade of black, which is gray, and that is enough. Rule 9 is a rule that I have just now mentioned to you, which is do not overemphasize with your use of type styles. Either it's italic or it's bold italic, and in color. Can you see the three? All of these need not be applied to a single level of text. Perhaps you can save these for when you have 3 or 4 or 5 different kinds of subheads in the same book, but otherwise any one is enough to establish typographic difference. Create hierarchy with changes in size, weight, color or style. Pick one effect for each level. Avoid doing more than 2 effects for a single level of text. For example, you can pair simple plain or Roman text with italic, but not with italic bold. That becomes too much. Rule 10 is the use of white space. The empty space around objects or text in the form of margins or space after headings, paragraphs and sections. Please use space very intelligently on the page. A display title must have a fairly substantial drop after it. If you have 2-3 different kinds of subheadings, each subheading must have a different amount of space before it. You must plan this when you begin. The picture caption should not be clinging to the body text. The page number should not be clinging to the main text. Maybe a single line space between them. The running head, if you have running heads in the book, they should not be holding on to the main text. The reader's eye should keep falling on the first line of main text. Every time they turn the page, it is not as if they should be reading the page architecture. Another very important point in this context is often, and I see this very often on poster designs or on WhatsApp forwards or even some memes sometimes on the internet, you must keep in mind that if you are putting text on a picture, if you are putting text into a colored box-like area, please make sure that the text is not touching the edges of either that picture or that box-like area. There must be some room, otherwise the text becomes unreadable and it looks like a very clumsy design. So if you can see the 2 examples here at the bottom of my page, you will notice the first one, the one on the left, is what I would call bad design. If the letters are touching the edge of the box may be a white box, but the box may have a border. Text should not be so close to the border. Text should not be so close to the edge of the box. There must be comfortable space on all 4 sides. It should be within. The box is the area for the text. The text should be within that particular area. You will see how much better how much more professional, how much more crisp and clear the example looks on the right hand side. This brings us to the end of this particular discussion of typesetting tips and the few rules that we must keep in mind. What I would now like to share with you is how we start to open a page on a page layout software. So far, I know that I have discussed at length with you what comprises good design, what a good well-designed book looks like. We've talked about hierarchy, dominance, we've discussed where to get images from, etc., etc. Now, I would like to guide you through some of the basic principles of setting up a page in a typesetting software. Some measurements are involved, and I would like to discuss these with you. When we open a page in a typesetting software, we have to keep two things in mind. One is the ultimate page or the trimmed page or the cut page that we are left with. The page that we see in a book is printed on a larger sheet of paper. One very big sheet of paper, so it will look something like this. At the printing press, you have a large sheet of paper like this, and in it are placed the pages for printing. Sometimes these are often in multiples of 8, right? You have the pages here. This is done at the printing press. They organize your material. Now, because of this, pages are actually not printed in sequence. When the printing process happens, page 1 could be here, 3 could be here, 6, 7, 5, etc. Once the printing is done, this entire big sheet with a combination of pages being printed on it, this is called a forma, but please note the spelling, F-O-R-M-E. One side of the forma is called forma A, and the reverse will be forma B, forma 16A, forma 16B. This means the book has up to 16 such large sheets. Okay, these sheets and these sizes are predetermined by the paper mill. They come to the paper merchant. They are more or less standard. So we as book designers, when we are designing, we realize, we check with the printing press what is going to be the size of the sheet. And if we are not sure, we ask them how many pages per forma. The reason for this is when you're doing a design of certain pages, any book, you then remember by checking with the printer what the page count will be, so that there is no wastage at the end. Therefore, like I mentioned, page counts are often in multiples of 8, which means there will be 8 pages per forma, or there will be in multiples of 16. If it's a smallish book, it could sometimes even be in multiples of 32. This page, when it is printed on both sides, this giant sheet, then the binder will fold it up, and if it has been folded correctly, immediately you get a little bunch like this, which becomes known as a folded and gathered sheet, and then you pile them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 or 6 such bunches of folded and gathered sheets, and then you stitch up on the spine and you have the book. One important sequence here is each bundle gets trimmed on 3 sides. It gets trimmed on the top, it gets trimmed on the outer edge or the foredge. The outer edge of the book is called a foredge. The foredge, and it gets trimmed at the bottom. The spine doesn't get cut, that stays folded, then it gets stitched, glue is applied, the cover is applied to the spine, etc. So what we then realize is the final page that we want in the book is going to be on a bigger sheet of paper. When it is printed, you don't print little pages like this if the page is 6 inches by 9 inches. And when the printing is complete, some amount of trimming is going to happen to that page. So we must make allowance for that. Therefore, your software page requires not only the print page, but also some excess which will be lost at the time of trimming. This excess is known in printing terminology as bleed. Bleed must be applied on the printed page that you are designing. Universally accepted bleeds are 3 millimeters. Alright, so now if I am told that the width of my book is 6 inches and that the height of my book is 9 inches, right? This is what I would describe as my trim size. This is the size I want to be left with once the book has been trimmed after the printing process, which means that my document size, my software document size has to be a little bigger than my trim size. And how much bigger? As you can see, I am going to draw with another color. I am going to draw another page over here. This red page that I have drawn is 6 inches wide and 9 inches tall. This is my trim sized page, right? This area in between, is the bleed. I must provide this to every page that I create, otherwise there will be trouble after printing. This is 3 millimeters, 3 millimeters on the top, 3 millimeters on the side and 3 millimeters at the bottom. We do not put bleed on this side where I am drawing now a thicker black line, because this is known as the spine of the book. The spine of the book does not require bleed. So if you are looking at the document, you will now realize that when you open the document, I am underlining the word document, when you open the word document on your either Adobe InDesign or your Quark Express software, whichever software it is that you're using, the digital document must be width plus 3 mm. In this case, I have 6 inches plus 3 millimeters. Okay, and the height gets the bleed twice, 3 millimeters for the top plus 3 millimeters for the bottom. I am saying this at some length because it is from your document that the bleed will be subtracted and you will be left with this red box. Did you see what I just did? The bleed has disappeared. That has been cut away during the printing and the binding process, and now you are left with the ultimate size, which is the size that you require. Okay, so the calculation is a very easy calculation, is whatever the width has been requested, width plus 3 mm, because the bleed is only put on the outside. The spine does not require any bleed. Height gets 3 mm on the top and 3 mm on the bottom. So whatever measurement you've got, width plus 1 bleed, height plus 2 bleed. Try and keep that in mind, because that will be of enormous help. Remember, you can blame the printer, but the printer does not have time to double check all this, and how it's not enough to just have a very aesthetically beautiful document. You have to keep in mind the printing process that will follow and design it keeping that practical aspect in mind as well. I will repeat it here once. The formula for calculating the document size is this. A document is the digital, it is page plus bleed, okay, page size plus bleed. which means the width of the page that you have been given plus 1 bleed, which you now know is 3 millimeters, and the height where you have to set it, you say height plus 2 bleed for top and bottom, 3 millimeters plus 3, which is 6 millimeters. This mathematics, if you are interested in being a book designer, then this formula and this mathematics should stay with you for the rest of your life. Whenever you are working with a new printer, if you haven't worked with them before, you must check once, if you can, via email or telephone, that is 3 millimeter bleed okay. So far in my experience it is. Once in a very, very rare occurrence, a printer may have asked for 5 millimeter bleed, but these days 3 millimeter bleed is accepted by printers across the world. We have had the good fortune to work with printers in the United Kingdom. We have worked with printers in India, of course, in different states of India. We have worked with printers once in China and in the United States. 3 millimeter bleed as an extra to give for the trimming of the pages is perfectly adequate, but it must exist in your document size. Now, in many, if not all typesetting softwares, there is something called a master page. A master page is effectively what you and I would call the template of that entire document. So, as we have been discussing about book design, for example, every page requires the running head, mostly every page. Mostly every page requires the page number. Mostly every page requires a main text box or text block, which is where the bulk of the text is going to appear. Now, instead of doing this on every single page, you can imagine the amount of copy pasting that will be required. Instead of doing this manually on every page, look in your software for how you can access the master page. I am more familiar with a software called Quark Express. There we have an option which is available from the Windows menu. If you look for the Windows menu at the top of your screen, the Windows menu drops down a whole list of other options in alphabetical order, and there you have something called page layout. The minute you click page layout, a sort of menu or a tablet, as I call it, or a palette opens up on the side of your screen. Immediately at the top of that palette, you can see a tiny little icon that says A Master A. Double click on the icon, and then what happens is very interesting, which is that a pair of double pages like this is going to open up. Okay, this is called a spread. This is going to be your verso page, the left hand side page, and this is going to be your recto page or the right hand side page. On the master page, we are going to establish the basics, the fundamental design of the overall document. One way to begin when you arrive at this master page is to leave at least ½ inch or sometimes 0.75 inches gap from the four sides. On the left, you often have something like this, which is a toolbar. You look for, there are box options, there are various tools. Over here they appear like this. The first tool often looks like a star because that is the item tool. Then you might have a tool that looks like a T, which is your text tool, and then there will be another tool, perhaps sometimes it looks like a rectangle, that is basically the picture box tool. So, if I have decided that in this particular document, I want ½ inch margins from the outside, then what I will do is I will take the box tool and just draw boxes. Now, before that, I'd like to show you that when you open up the document, and if you have given bleed correctly, at least in Quark Express, there will be a blue margin appearing like this. I'm sorry, I'm not a very good artist, so my lines are all looking like waves in the ocean, but you will get the idea. The document looks like this, right? everything outside this is going to be your bleed. Everything outside. So if you have done your measurements correctly, everything outside the blue area is going to be bleed. Now we come into the document and we want to leave a ½ inch gap on all four sides. Those are going to become our page margins. So what we do is, often as a shortcut, as a way of doing this quickly, we draw a box, a picture box. You select the picture box tool, you come into the page and you drag. Make sure somewhere you have a measurements bar like this, where you will notice the minute you draw a box, you will be able to see the width and the height. Change both the width and the height to 0.5 inches. 0.5 inches you realize is ½ inch, and you can copy paste that box onto the four sides and you get an inner block of space which is actually ½ inch away from all four sides. This inner block that I am creating in green is technically, I know I am doing it terribly badly, please be patient with me. This inner box outlined in green is ½ inch away from all four sides. We are setting up the page. What we must do is we repeat the drawing of and the placement of the boxes on all four sides like this. Same ½ inch box, you can just copy paste. Some of you may know that Ctrl C is copy, Ctrl V is paste. So once you've done a copy, just paste the box equally on all four sides. Please observe, I am placing them on the blue line and not at the edge of the document. Everything within the blue line is what we are going to be left with after the trimming of the page is complete. And here on this page as well, we have the ability to have the text box, the text block that we will work with is going to fall within this green area. Now we have isolated what we are going to work with. This entire area comprises our workable space on the page, right? This is what we are going to stick to. We are not going to fall out into the margin. A ½ inch margin is a very, very minimal margin that I have recommended. Depending on the book, your margin could be 0.75 inches, sometimes it could be 1 inch, sometimes maybe more. Please note that I am qualifying that by saying it depends on the size of your book, it depends on how much text your publisher or your client wants you to pack into a page. You know, it depends on how wide the page is. So all of this is workable, but at the very minimum, at least ½ inch from all four sides. Now, having done this, we have figured out now, therefore, that this is the area we are going to work within. We can get rid of these little boxes that we had drawn. We don't need them anymore. So you can just click on them and delete them. We don't need them sitting here in the middle anymore. We are now going to focus on the things we have to do within this green text area. In book setting terminology, this green area is your text block, right? Within it, we are going to set our text. Now, we need to draw another text box here and another text box here. When you draw this, you have to make a little adjustment to the background text box. So as you can see, you can grip the handle and just slightly close it. I am moving pretend that this is the top of the box. Usually boxes have little square handles like this which show up. You can just grip the top of the handle and move the box down. This little box that I have created at the top of the page is the box in which we will have the running head. You will remember this side gets the author's name and this side gets the chapter title if it is so required. Okay, you double click with your cursor, and if you have drawn a text box with the T tool, the cursor will start flashing. If it is not flashing, it means you may have accidentally drawn a picture box. Once the cursor is flashing, look at the manuscript and see what the text for the running head should be. You can copy paste from Microsoft Word or you can type it out. In Quark Express, the default font is often Helvetica 12. It may also be that in InDesign. Good professional design does not use Helvetica, it doesn't use Times New Roman, it doesn't use Comic Sans MS. So you can type out the name of the author in Helvetica, but I would recommend that you then change the typeface to something else. Perhaps you can use Garamond, or the best way to figure out is to just experiment with the typefaces that you have in your computer and choose one accordingly. The default font size, whenever you type something in Quark Express, the default font size is 12. 12 is too big for the running head. It may look okay to you on the screen, but when that book goes to print, 12 for running head is definitely not allowed. It should be at least 9. Remember, I said body text should be 10 or 11 and all other elements of the page must be smaller than the body text. So when you are creating the running head, you must remember that and make it a little smaller. If you don't want running heads, it's also possible that you might want running feet, in which case the text box that you need to draw for it must be drawn at the foot of the page. Just draw text box. Remember, don't have the green box full length then, in which case the green box then gets closed from the bottom. Why am I doing this? So that later when you bring in the text of the book, the page number will not be sitting on that text, right? Now you can have the same rules apply. Whether the text is on the head or at the foot of the page, it is still the name of the author on the left hand side page and it is the name of the short story or the title on the right hand side. One other very important entrant at this point is the page number. Some books may or may not have the running head or running feet. It is not mandatory and you will often be told whether they are required or not. But as you will have realized, all books must have page numbers because otherwise it is not possible to negotiate that book. The poor reader will not know where they are. You as the book designer will also not know where you are. Often it takes 2 or 3 or 4 days to design a book and you will keep losing your place. How do we get the page number to appear? In at least Quark Express, we draw a box again on the top or at the bottom. Make sure the cursor is flashing in there so that it means that you have chosen a text box, and then in Quark you type Control 3. Control 3, if you type into the box, it gives you a symbol that looks like this. Please note it's a symbol. Please don't expect 1, 2, 3 to appear. This symbol helps Quark understand where the page number is to appear. You can then change the alignment. You can have it to the left of the page or to the right of the page. Again, this symbol will have appeared in Helvetica 12. I would recommend you change the typeface. If you already have running heads or running feet, I would recommend you change the typeface to that same font, and page numbers can easily be 8 point, sometimes they can even be 7 point. It's not a problem. If you have access to a printer, a desktop printer, I would recommend you take a printout of the first page and see if all of this is looking okay to the eye. In some typefaces, size 8 is very readable, so is size 7, but in some 8 may be readable, 7 may be too small. It is very difficult to give you an exact formula. I won't know what font you're using. The best thing is to try it out, and the most important thing is to remember nothing can be larger than the body text in all of these representations, right? Now, once you've done Control 3 on this page, you must also do it on this page. So you draw another text box like this and you press Command 3, and over here you just change the typeface, you just change the size. We have now effectively set up the master page. We have said in this green box. Now the green box looks like this. It's got a little bit of space on the top. I'll do it again a little cleanly. This is my green box. Within this is going to be my text, and on top is my page number box. At the bottom is my running footer box, right? And this green area, now when I enter my document, this is the green area that is going to hold the narrative, right? The main text that comprises the manuscript. Please note that this entire area that I have worked on, all my components, all the three objects, my running head, my text box and my page number box, all three are respecting that half-inch distance from all, right? This is how page margins are created. You establish the amount of space that's required, and then if you want, you can draw guides. Guides may be drawn by going into the ruler area of your screen, gripping and then pulling down, and you stick to that same area. The page number on the left hand side must fall exactly at the same place as the page number on the right hand side. The block of text on the left page must be identical to the block of text on the right hand side page. The running foot appearing on the left hand side page must be identical to the running foot appearing on the right. The pages must be mirror copies of each other. Please don't say, I want the page number on the left in one font, I want the page number on the right in another font. Don't do all that stuff. Find a font that works for you. Page numbers can be size 8, running feet could be maybe 8.5 or 9, body text could be 10 or 10.5. You will have still a very elegant book as long as you have got the mirror reflections through the use of clever margins and through the use of respecting those margins. Now, once we have set up the master page, we need to revert to the palette from window that I had said was called the page layout palette. In that page layout palette, we have finished with this setting the template for the document, and we need to go back to the most important thing now, which is the text is going to enter the picture. The page layout palette often comes on the side like this. This is where you have something called A Master A and a little picture like this, and A Master A. The page layout palette often looks like this. There's a line in the middle and you have pages that show up like this, right? This is always page 1, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. As you will notice, page 1 falls on the right hand side. In English and most of the other languages that we work with, books will open on the right hand side with page 1. When you come into the first page, this is what the page then looks like. You double click, you have your blue guides which are showing you your eventual bleed area. If you have drawn guides in Quark Express, they show up in green. This is your green text box area, like so. And you have at the top the page number box, and you have at the bottom your running foot box, right? Now, the first page, this is actually page 1. So, you will notice that where there was the symbol on the master page, that symbol immediately becomes number 1. If there was number 1 typed onto your master page, every page would show number 1. That's why we don't type the page number. We type Control or Command 3. Quark gives itself that symbol, and then once you're into the document, it recognizes that symbol as, oh, I have to put the page number here, right? This becomes page 1 and you have running text on the top of the page. However, this page is going to be the display page. It's entirely possible that you are going to have a big display title or heading over here. When you have a display page like this, you are not allowed to have any page architecture above it. The display heading, the display title is meant to draw your eye. So, if you have used running heads, you delete it manually on this page. If you have used folios, which means the use of the page number at the top, when the page number comes at the top, it's called a folio. If you have used a folio, you must delete that as well. The only thing you are allowed on a display page is the foot folio, because the heading is on top, nothing is disturbing the viewing of the heading, the page number can quietly sit at the bottom, but never at the top. This is something you must remember and you must manually delete. Now, having done this, what we need to do even before this, even before we arrive at the heading, is you come into page 1, you double click with the cursor inside this text box, right? And you say the command you need to give is Control E or Command E. Control E is for those on the PC, Command E is for those on an Apple OS. When you say Control E or Command E, a dialog box pops up. The dialog box will ask you where is the Word document that you want me to access. Basically, Control E or Command E in a text box is the command for get text. Okay, get the text. Remember, the text exists in a Word document. That Word document has been emailed to you. Microsoft Word is a word processing software. The author in most cases will have written the book in Microsoft Word. Then an editor will have done the corrections, will have had questions for the author, etc., etc. They will have emailed each other back and forth, correcting, recorrecting, revising, revising, and so on. All that happens on Microsoft Word. Then when the text work is more or less complete, or at least 90% complete, then they decide to send the book to be laid out. Sometimes we refer to it as an artwork, sometimes we call it the layout, sometimes we call it the typeset document, right? The design, when the type then changes from Microsoft Word to all of this that I have just shown you, the text block comes in, the page number comes in, etc. The final page size comes in, etc., etc. So, you can't type into long stretches of text. You don't use Quark Express as a word processor. The text has happened in Word, but now what do you have to do? You have to get the text from Microsoft Word into Quark Express. You don't even have to worry about copy paste. All you do is, once your cursor is flashing in the box, you do Control E or Command E, get text, and a window opens up, and basically your computer says, where do you want me to get the text from? And you choose the Word document. You choose the Word document that is sitting somewhere in the machine. You can read the file name and you just click it and you say open. Open appears at the base of the screen, right? The minute you say open, you just wait for a few seconds and then you will notice suddenly you have many more pages than you had already in your page layout. Sometimes it can go up to 100, 200, 300, whatever, because now you suddenly have all the text that was there in the Word document has miraculously come into your page, and Quark or InDesign is capable of supplying as many pages as required to hold the length of that text in the template of the document that you have just designed. Now, if the document is 50 pages long, if the document is 80 pages long, if the document is 90 pages long, each page will have a page number, each page will have a running head or a running foot as you had done on the master page. Now, a few warnings with regard to this. When you open a document, when you open a new document in any of the page layout softwares, I have already mentioned that the document size requires the addition of bleed. Two other aspects need to be kept in mind. One is an option called facing pages. Facing pages gives you a page layout that looks like this tablet that I have retained on the right hand side of the screen. A book has facing pages. So the software must be told that the document that I am designing requires facing pages. Often it looks like this and there is a little gray box that appears next to it. You have to click so that you get a tick mark on that gray box. You must select it, right? The second option that also must be selected is an option called, and this is very important, is an option called automatic text box. Automatic text box must be turned on. All this will be happening when you have done Control N and you are opening a new project or a new layout in whichever software you are using. Right? Be careful. Facing pages means otherwise the page layout will look like a Microsoft Word document. One big page followed by another underneath it. That is not what we require in a book. It must be facing pages. And the second element you must keep in mind and you must turn on is the automatic text box. When we were doing the resizing within that half-inch area on the master page, the automatic text box is the text box that you must resize. Usually the automatic text box opens up very big. It opens up to the entire size of your page. So when you get into the master page, often some of my students get worried or confused that the automatic text box has not appeared. If you have chosen the automatic text box, it is there. Take your item tool that looks like a star or a compass, click on the master page, and you will figure out immediately that the handles get activated, which means the automatic text box is there. You resize it to within the green guides, and the use of the automatic text box is precisely what I have described just now, which is you do your master page, you come into only page 1 and you click Control E and you get the text, and Quark will supply as many pages as are required because it will supply automatic text boxes to hold your text no matter how long or how short that text is. Tomorrow we will continue a discussion briefly before I turn to the intricacies of cover design. Tomorrow I will like to discuss with you some changes that we make to the typography once we have got the text onto our layout.
Hello, I am A.K. Sharma and I teach sociology in IIT Kanpur. I am attempting to answer a simple question, what is sociology? Now friends, one simple answer would be that sociology is a study of human behavior. And this study of human behavior has a history. Actually, due to growth of science, technology, and due to industrialization and economic development in the West, initially there was a hope that by application of science and technology, the face of this world can be changed to the advantage of mankind. But what was found or what was observed, that this did not happen. And despite economic development, urbanization, industrialization, surveys showed that poverty had increased, unemployment had increased, even health conditions became worse. And today you will be surprised to know that there was a time when death rate of urban areas was higher than the death rate of rural areas. Cities or the places of development, industrialization and education and enlightenment became consumers of rural population. So people started asking, why is it so? And some philosophers, engineers, mathematicians who contributed to emergence of a discipline like sociology, started thinking that perhaps we need a new subject in which we will apply the same tools and techniques which are being used by scientists, mathematicians, physicists, chemists, but we will study human behavior. In other words, we will try to discover if there are laws of human behavior, and by applying those laws, perhaps in the future the condition of mankind can be improved. This is how sociology developed. Initially Auguste Comte called this social physics. He also used terms like social statics and social dynamics, the usual division of mathematics, and he believed that social statics will study relationship between different parts of society and social dynamics will study relationship between parts of society and total society, change in total society. Now, you may ask that if sociology is the study of human behavior, there are many other branches of social sciences which study human behavior, economics, anthropology, psychology, etc., etc. The difference between sociology and these disciplines is that while in these disciplines we study one specific aspect of human behavior, like economics will study production and distribution of wealth, psychology will study cognitive processes or mental models or personality, social psychology will study personality, anthropology will study culture. Now, somebody has to relate one aspect of human behavior with the other aspects, or one social fact with the other. These are all social facts for us. And if somebody tries to link cognitive processes with economic conditions or urbanization or caste system or religion, or somebody tries to relate urbanization with human psyche, or somebody tries to correlate cultural context with economic behavior, then it becomes sociology. So, sociology combines different areas which are individually studied by different disciplines. And sociology also studies new questions which are not studied by any existing subject so far. So, like these days issues of waste disposal, entropy, environment, safety, urban places as new geomorphological systems come up, and we want to correlate one aspect of urbanization, say percentage of population living in urban areas, and risk, environmental risk, carbon dioxide, this emission, that emission. Now, which will be the first discipline to take interest in these things? Because sociology. So, sociology not only combines facts from different aspects of society, sociology also addresses new questions. And I can also say that one central feature of sociology is to explain individual behavior or individual psyche in terms of properties of larger society. In simple terms, if you imagine that there are two aspects of human behavior, individual and society, then while other disciplines like psychology are focusing more on individual, we study characteristics of individuals in terms of certain characteristics of larger society. This is what sociology does. Sociology is very useful for planners. Sociology is useful for answering new questions, as I said, which have not been answered by any existing discipline. And I would say that sociology is especially helpful for self enlightenment or for developing empathy, because sociology only tells you that there are no right or wrong answers of social issues. It is not physics, it is not mathematics, it does not have fixed answers to issues, because questions can be looked at from variety of perspectives. So, role of perspectives, thinking, interest, power, etc., also come up uh, in answering social questions. And it is this aspect that something can be looked at from variety of perspective, that something can be looked at from the perspective of government, the same thing can be looked at entirely differently from the perspective of people or from the perspective of NGOs or from the perspective of experts. This realization, this takes us to self enlightenment and empathy. Thank you. I am A.K. Sharma and I am professor of sociology at IIT Kanpur. The question I am going to address is what is urbanization? Urbanization is essentially the process of population concentration, which means that if more people start living in a smaller number of places, or if the distribution of population becomes more unequal, like more people living in places like Bombay, Calcutta, Mexico, then we say that the urbanization is taking place. Essentially, it means increase in percentage of population living in areas or localities which are defined as urban. Urbanization is a new phenomenon, of course, a post-industrial phenomenon. About 200 years ago, hardly 5% population of the world lived in urban areas, and today more than 50% population of the world is living in urban areas or localities which are classified as urban. You will be happy to know that according to 2011 census of India, in our own country for the first time, increase in the urban population has been greater than the increase in the rural population. Though India is not so urban as the developed countries, and about 31% population of India only is living in urban areas. We can believe that in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time, India will also be more urban, at least more urban than what it is. It may not be 80%, but certainly it will be 35% or 40%. Now, how is this urban locality defined? Because this definition of locality as urban or rural is crucial to measure level of urbanization. I will give you definition of our own country. In Indian census, an urban locality is defined in two ways. There are statutory towns and there are census towns. All places with municipality, municipal corporation, cantonment or notified town area committees are called urban. This is statutory definition. According to demographic definition, there are three main criteria. If a locality has more than 5,000 people or 75% of male labor force is engaged in non-agricultural activities, or the density of population is 400 per square kilometer or 1000 per square mile, then we say that the locality may be classified as urban. There are many other additions to this definition. Now, we have the concept of urban agglomeration and many other things, but essentially this is how urban population is defined in India. And as I said that urbanization is associated with economic development and industrialization, same is the case with India. About 100 years ago in India, only 11% people were living in urban areas. Today 31% are living in urban areas, and this is obviously linked with economic development of the country, growth of per capita income, and industrialization. I remember that in one 5-year plan it was mentioned that today this urban population can grow by way of natural increase of births minus deaths in the urban areas itself or through rural to urban migration. Today nearly 60% contribution to growth of urban population is due to rural to urban migration, and this is going to increase. This is essentially what urbanization means. Urbanization means growth of population in localities defined as urban in relation to population of localities defined as rural, and I have given you Indian definition. Thank you very much.